There's a mysterious voice that rises by the riverside, soft, irresistible, and strong enough to hypnotize even the most cautious man. Picture yourself walking alone at dusk, when the forest seems to fall into silence, and suddenly a sweet song drifts across the water, a sound so beautiful, so haunting, that your body moves on its own, drawn by an invisible force. You step closer to the riverbank, your heart racing, your eyes searching for the source of that melody until, at last, you see her. A woman of rare beauty, with long hair flowing like dark waves, and green eyes glowing like the surface of a moonlit lake. She smiles, and in that instant you realize there's no turning back. But who is this alluring figure that dwells in the rivers and enchants those who dare to cross her path? Is she nothing more than a creation of folklore, or a real presence still haunting the dark waters of the forest? They say her name is Iara, Mother of the Waters, and those who have heard her song were never the same again. The legend of Iara, also known as the Mother of the Waters, is one of the most fascinating stories in Brazilian folklore. To understand her origins, we need to go back in time, long before Brazil became the country we know today. Along the riverbanks and deep within the Amazon rainforest, indigenous peoples already told stories of water spirits, protective yet treacherous beings who lived in lakes, streams, and waterfalls. These tales were never just stories meant to frighten children. They were part of a worldview in which every element of nature had life, will, and mystery. Among these entities, one figure began to stand out, an enchanting woman of incomparable beauty, who rose from the waters to seduce men. Her song was so hypnotic that no one could resist. Many believed that the disappearances of fishermen and travelers were explained by Iara's spell. Over the centuries, the legend evolved, blending indigenous traditions with European influences brought by the colonizers. The result was a figure who carried both the raw power of the wild and the allure of the mermaids from the old world's stories. Iara is described as a mermaid with long dark or green hair, fair skin, and eyes that gleam like precious stones. Some accounts portray her with the tail of a fish much like the mermaids of classic lore, while others describe her as a woman in full form, but with an otherworldly presence nearly indistinguishable from a mortal until she draws near the water. In every version, however, one detail remains the same. Her beauty is dangerous, for it seduces and ensnares. Historically, the legend also served as a way to explain the dangers of the rivers. Life by the water has always been surrounded by risks, strong currents, aquatic creatures, disease, and even the simple chance of getting lost in the immensity of the forest. Turning these dangers into a mythical figure was a way to warn the young, to teach respect for nature, and to make sense of unexpected tragedies. After all, it was easier to believe that someone had fallen to Iara's call than to accept the unforgiving unpredictability of the jungle. Over time, the Mother of the Waters ceased to be just a regional myth and became part of Brazil's cultural imagination. Her story was recorded by writers, poets, and folklorists, appearing in books, songs, and even modern adaptations on television and film. Today, Iara is remembered both as a cultural symbol and as a mysterious figure who continues to inspire curiosity and fear. But the great question remains: who is Iara really? A collective creation to explain the dangers of the forest, an inheritance from indigenous myths about water spirits, or is she a real presence, still living in the depths of the rivers, waiting to lure the unsuspecting with her haunting song?
The story of Iara, like so many ancient legends, has countless versions, and that's exactly what makes it so intriguing. In many of them, the origin of the Mother of the Waters begins in tragedy. Tradition says that before becoming an enchanted being, Iara was a young indigenous woman of rare beauty. Her skin shone like moonlight on water, her hair was long and silky, and her eyes carried both gentleness and determination. She wasn't only admired, she was feared and envied. Some tales claim Iara was a skilled warrior, stronger and more capable than many men of her tribe, respected, intelligent, and proud. She inspired both admiration and jealousy. Her brothers, consumed with envy, plotted against her. They planned to accuse her of treason so she would be condemned and eliminated. But Iara discovered the plot before it was too late. In a desperate act, she confronted her brothers and, in self-defense, ended up killing them. But, realizing what she had done, she fled through the forest in tears, until she was found by her own father, the tribe's chief. Overcome with grief and shame, he chose a cruel punishment. He ordered her to be thrown into the river. Iara fought, cried, begged for forgiveness, but the waters swallowed her whole, and there, in the dark depths of the river, her transformation began. But instead of dying, the young woman was reborn as a supernatural being, half woman, half mermaid. From that day on, she became guardian of the waters, but also a danger to anyone who dared come too close. Another darker version of the legend says Iara was never human at all. She was a spirit born from the power of the rivers themselves, a daughter of the moon and the currents. A feminine presence, beautiful and seductive, created to protect the forest, but transformed into something dangerous by human greed and disobedience. Regardless of her origin, one thing is certain: Ira's power lies in her voice. Her song is described as irresistible, sweet yet sorrowful, capable of hypnotizing anyone who hears it. Fishermen who venture out alone on full moon nights say the melody rises suddenly, carried on the wind, as if it came from every direction at once. First, the heart begins to race. Then, the legs seem to move on their own, guided by the music. Those who give in eventually find the Mother of the Waters by the riverbank, always dazzling, always smiling. And in that moment, the man's fate is sealed. Some stories say Iara drags him beneath the river, drowning him in its depths. Others claim she takes him to her underwater palace, where he becomes her eternal prisoner, condemned to live forever, entranced by her beauty. And there are tales in which the man survives, but he is never the same again. He returns home silent, his eyes lost, unable to forget what he saw. It is as if a piece of his soul remained with her, trapped at the bottom of the waters. The ancients used to say that rivers guard unfathomable mysteries, and that every whirlpool, every treacherous current, could be Iara's invisible touch. River mothers warned their children never to play alone by the water's edge, for it took only a moment's distraction for the mother of the waters to call them, and men avoided fishing at night, fearing the song that could seal their doom. As time passed, Iara's legend became more than just a story told by the fireside. Many claim to have seen her silhouette in the moonlight, hair shimmering like strands of gold, rising from the water only to vanish seconds later. Others swear they've heard her sweet voice on silent nights, even when no one was near. Tales like these continue to feed the mystery. At what point does Iara remain only a myth, and when does she become real?
What makes the legend of Iara even more unsettling is not only her hypnotic beauty or her tragic origin, but the fact that, even today, there are people who claim to have encountered the Mother of the Waters. These are stories passed down through generations, but also recent testimonies, accounts from fishermen, river dwellers, and even travelers who swear they've lived through experiences that defy explanation. One of the oldest tales comes from the Amazon region. A solitary fisherman, known in his community for his courage, once decided to cast his nets at night, ignoring the warnings of the elders. The sky was clear, the moon reflecting on the calm waters, when suddenly he heard a soft song. At first, he thought it was just the wind, or perhaps a night bird. But soon he realized the melody was human, too sweet to be mistaken. Entranced, he followed the voice to the riverbank, and there, before his very eyes, appeared a woman of stunning beauty, her black hair flowing over her shoulders like dark waves. She beckoned him with the slightest gesture of her hand. The fisherman could not resist. The next day his boat was found adrift, empty. His body was never recovered. For the locals, there was no doubt. Iara had taken him. Decades later, in a riverside community, a young man returned home in shock. He had vanished for hours in the river, and when he was finally found, he was soaked from head to toe, his eyes distant, mumbling broken phrases. Among them, one stood out. She was singing to me, and I couldn't resist. The young man survived, but he was never the same again. He spent sleepless nights staring at the current, as if waiting for the voice to call him once more. Even modern travelers claim to have felt the presence of the Mother of the Waters. Some tourists, canoeing along the Amazon, reported hearing a soft melody that seemed to come from nowhere. One described the music as if it were inside his head, impossible to block out. Another claimed he saw, from a distance, a feminine figure on the riverbank only, for her to vanish the moment they tried to get closer. And it's not only men who tell such stories. Some women say they have seen Iara as a guardian of the waters, appearing not to seduce, but to protect. One river woman told of how, as a child, she nearly drowned while playing in the river. Just as the water pulled her under, she swore she felt feminine hands pushing her back to the surface. For her, there was no doubt it was the mother of the waters who saved her. This protective side of the legend reveals how Iara can be both a harbinger of death and a force of preservation, depending on who crosses her path. But what explains these testimonies? Could it all be the power of imagination, fed by generations of stories? In the silence of the forest and the vastness of the rivers, could the human mind create illusions, sounds, and visions convincing enough to deceive anyone? On the other hand, could it be possible that something truly exists, an entity yet unknown, dwelling in the waters, showing itself only to the chosen ones to seduce some and save others? What is certain is that the more reports emerge, the thinner the line between myth and reality becomes. Each story leaves behind a chilling thought. What if Iara really does exist? And what if, on some silent night, as you walk along the riverbank, it is you who hears her irresistible song? The legend of Iara has crossed centuries, traveling from the oral traditions of indigenous peoples to the present day, surviving in books, songs, plays, television, and most of all, in popular memory. But perhaps what makes her so powerful is precisely her ambiguity. Iara is not only a monster, nor only a protector. She is both at once reflection of nature itself, which can be generous and beautiful, yet unpredictable and deadly. Rivers, with their calm waters on the surface and treacherous currents beneath, are the perfect symbol of this duality. For those who depend on them, whether to fish, to travel, or simply to live along their banks, the rivers represent both life and danger in equal measure. In this sense, Iara is the personification of the mystery of the waters. She draws you in, enchants, fascinates, but she demands a high price from those who dare to come too close. What is most remarkable is how, even in modern times, the legend endures. In riverside communities, it is not unusual to hear recent stories of sightings and mysterious songs. Ordinary people, with nothing to gain by lying, tell experiences so vivid they make us wonder, could it really be just imagination? Is Iara merely a symbol meant to remind us of the respect we owe nature, or is she something far more real, something we simply cannot explain? And perhaps it is precisely this doubt that gives her power. When you walk through the forest, or drift along a silent river, who can say with absolute certainty that you are alone? Who can promise that, with the next breath of wind, you will not hear that sweet voice calling you closer? Uncertainty feeds fear, and fear keeps the legend alive. The truth is, whether real or not, Iara invites us to reflect on how we treat nature, how we face our deepest fears, and how thin the line can be between reality and imagination. Perhaps we may never prove her existence, but do we really need to? Sometimes, belief itself is enough to keep a myth alive. And now, I leave the question to you. If you were standing by the riverbank on a silent night and suddenly heard a soft song whispering your name, would you have the courage to resist? If this story made you think, gave you chills, and pulled you deeper into the mystery of Brazilian folklore, don't forget to leave a like on this video. It truly helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing more legends, mysteries, and dark secrets like this one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to do it now and ring the bell so you don't miss any of the next episodes of Urban Secrets, where we explore the unknown, the hidden, and the unexplainable. After all, the world is full of dark stories, and some of them might be much closer than you imagine.